Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're diving into a critical question that challenges our understanding of environmental progress. Are emissions falling or just shifting elsewhere? We often hear about advancements in electric vehicles, sustainable fuels, and eco-friendly logistics. But is the picture truly as green as it seems, or are we inadvertently moving the problem rather than solving it? This video will explore the complex reality behind green transport initiatives, examining how global supply chains and economic pressures can lead to emissions shifting. To understand where we are, let's briefly look back. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented mobility and trade, but also widespread fossil fuel consumption. For decades, the environmental impact of transport was largely overlooked. It wasn't until the late 20th century that green transport entered the global lexicon. Early efforts focused on fuel efficiency, catalytic converters, and promoting public transport. The 21st century accelerated this, pushing for electric vehicles, biofuels, and efficient shipping. But as we've made strides in one area, new complexities have emerged, particularly concerning the global nature of production and consumption. So, what exactly is emissions shifting? It's the phenomenon where a reduction in emissions in one area or country is offset by an increase elsewhere. It's not a true global reduction, but rather a relocation of the environmental burden. This can happen in several ways. One major factor is outsourcing production and transport impacts. As developed nations strive to reduce their domestic industrial emissions, manufacturing often moves to countries with less stringent regulations. The emissions associated with producing those goods then occur abroad, and the emissions from transporting them across vast distances are added to the global tally. While the consuming nation's domestic emissions might look better on paper, the overall global impact might not have improved or could even have worsened. Another aspect is modal shifts, road vs sea vs rail. Policies might encourage a shift from road transport to rail or sea for certain goods. However, this isn't always a straightforward win. The infrastructure for these modes, the types of fuels used, and the sheer volume of goods transported globally by sea, for instance, mean that while individual journeys might be greener, the cumulative effect can still be substantial. The environmental impact of massive container ships is a significant concern. The push for cleaner fuels is commendable. Electric vehicles produce zero tailpipe emissions, and biofuels offer alternatives to traditional fossil fuels. However, we must ask, are we creating cleaner fuels but dirtier supply chains? The production of batteries for EVs requires mining rare earth minerals, a process often associated with significant environmental degradation and high energy consumption. Similarly, the cultivation of crops for biofuels can lead to deforestation, habitat loss, and increased fertilizer use, all with their own emissions footprint. This leads us to the concept of carbon leakage in global trade. When a country implements strict carbon pricing or environmental regulations, industries might relocate to countries without such policies to avoid costs. This leakage means that the emissions don't disappear. They simply move to a different jurisdiction, undermining the global effort to reduce greenhouse gases. It's a complex economic and environmental challenge that highlights the need for international cooperation. Measuring real emissions honestly is crucial but incredibly challenging. Traditional accounting often focuses on territorial emissions, what's produced within a country's borders. However, a more accurate picture requires a life cycle assessment approach, considering emissions from raw material extraction, manufacturing, transport, use, and disposal. This includes the embedded or embodied carbon in imported goods. Current policy blind spots often fail to account for these indirect and outsourced emissions. many climate policies are designed with a domestic focus, inadvertently incentivizing emissions shifting rather than genuine global reductions. Without a comprehensive, internationally harmonized framework for measuring and reporting emissions across entire supply chains, we risk celebrating false victories. From a supply chain perspective, the conclusion is clear: true green transport cannot be achieved by optimizing individual segments in isolation. We need a holistic view. Supply chains are inherently global and interconnected. Optimizing a factory's energy use in one country means little if the raw materials are sourced from a highly polluting process elsewhere, or if the finished product travels halfway around the world in a carbon-intensive manner. The focus must shift from simply reducing emissions at the point of consumption or production to minimizing the total carbon footprint across the entire product journey. This requires transparency, collaboration between different actors in the supply chain, and innovative logistics solutions that prioritize efficiency and sustainability from end to end. Economically, the insights are equally complex. The drive for cheaper goods and competitive advantage often fuels emissions shifting. Companies seeking to minimize costs may choose production locations or transport methods that are less environmentally friendly but more economically viable in the short term. This creates a dilemma. How do we incentivize true sustainability without penalizing businesses or consumers? There's a clear need for economic policies that internalize environmental costs, making polluting activities more expensive and sustainable alternatives more attractive. This could involve carbon border adjustments, where tariffs are imposed on imports from countries with weaker climate policies, or subsidies for green technologies and sustainable practices. However, such measures must be carefully designed to avoid protectionism and ensure equitable development. The economic transition to truly green transport will require significant investment, innovation, and a re-evaluation of what constitutes economic growth. Looking to the future, the challenge of emissions shifting demands a more sophisticated approach to green transport. We can expect continued innovation in electric and hydrogen-powered vehicles, sustainable aviation fuels, and advanced logistics. However, technological fixes alone won't suffice. Future solutions will likely involve global policy coordination, international agreements that account for embodied emissions and prevent carbon leakage, enhanced transparency, better data collection and reporting across supply chains, allowing consumers and businesses to make informed choices. Circular economy principles, reducing the need for new production and transport by emphasizing reuse, repair, and recycling. Consumer awareness and demand, educated consumers demanding genuinely sustainable products and services, driving market change. Investment in green infrastructure, developing robust rail networks, port electrification, and smart logistics hubs. The journey to truly green transport is not just about cleaner vehicles. It's about fundamentally rethinking our global production and consumption patterns. It's about ensuring that when we say emissions are falling, they are genuinely falling, not just shifting elsewhere. The future of our planet depends on our ability to confront this complex truth and act decisively.